Bathurst, what are you going to do? Shave a mohawk in or something, mate?
I reckon just the dirty mo.
Oh, the Dale Earnhardt. I'm with you.
Clean shaven, and I've got a bit of ginger too, so it would look...
Bit of straubs.
Oh no! He's in the fence! They're both in the fence! They're all in the fence! Oh, unbelievable!
Sound check?
Thank you. Yep, they're working.
Never gets old, that sound.
No, have a sip before you cheers, by all means.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah, it's going down like nails.
This one's a little bit different tonight. We always do the debrief after the event, but this time I'm actually at Sydney Motorsport Park with the Red Bull crew. I got a stint on Monday taking some guests for hot laps. So it's my first time in a car since February, I think. So Monday's a big day for me doing rides.
And we know how you go with the rides too. You've told that story on the show before.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, have crashed on a ride before. No one was in the car though. It was a warm-up lap that I fenced it on. So
You'll be right.
hence the name of the Outlap King back in the day, if anyone here was on Twitch back during COVID. But anyway, back to it, Barbara. We've very serious on this show. We've got Sydney Motorsport Park this weekend, and first got to say, gutted that we can't live stream this one. This will be the first race this season we haven't been able to live stream the supercars. So
It's a night race too. Would have got a bit loose if we were.
it would, it would have been. I tell you what, the debrief on Sunday night would have been equally as loose. But we are back on the sofa previewing this time the supercars events. They are at Sydney Motorsport Park. I'm personally pretty excited about getting up there and having a run in the car. The odd thing about running hot laps is you got a passenger beside you. So, you potentially got 100 kilos sitting beside you. So the car feels pretty different. But after seeing the season that they've had so far, I'm pretty pumped to get back in the car and see what it feels like, what it's all about again.
I'm sure they'll give you great tyres too. So
yeah, I hear ride days. They give they'll save their best tyres from the race weekend for the ride day. That's
sure,
for
it'll
sure.
feel amazing.
The first thing from this year is that there's only one night race, and Sydney Motorsport Park is that race. So I'm a little bit bummed about that. Personally, as a driver, I always loved the night race, and then I think as a fan, it's a bit of spectacle. It's a good show. Like you see the fire out the side of the car. I think the event feels a bit more like speedway, a bit more like sprint cars, what we all grew up enjoying. So yeah, I think it's a shame there's not more than one night race for the season.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And it takes you back to when you were a kid racing karts. I know a lot of people used to come down to Oakley and Junior Top Guns.
Yeah.
It was a night meeting.
Once.
And I just remember any time you race at night now, I still think back to when you were young tacker at Junior Top Gun. So everything feels faster too. So from the driver's seat, it feels faster and cooler in my opinion. And then I think from a spectator's point of view, the brakes glow, the flames, you can see a bit more. It's just a bit more exciting, a bit more entertainment.
Yeah, I think that like when you're driving, because you lose that bit of depth in the dark, and so everything comes at you a bit faster.
Like Sydney's pretty good. The lights they did there are pretty amazing, aren't they?
After the first year there was like coming on the front straight, they were running, I think, like higher lights. So only part of the track was permanent.
Well, they hadn't
permanent
finished
lighting.
all their stuff yet.
And they hadn't finished, yes. They hadn't finished all of the lighting. So you'd come on the front straight and you're testing track limits without even knowing you were doing it. You like run onto the front straight out of the last corner and you'd be in the dirt and you couldn't even see the edge of the track. So it's totally different now, is really well lit. And Sydney's probably one of the best tracks for that. Like they run a lot of nighttime events throughout the season as well outside the supercars. So it's a track that's made for it. I think the problem they had at the start was the lighting, because those events typically run on shorter circuits, not the full track.
Right.
I think it was the last sector that wasn't completed back in the day.
Right,
so it was lighting there that was pretty limited.
It's pretty good now though, mate, because we've ran there even in the Trans Am night meetings. Our headlights are stickers. So yeah, it's definitely
like the cars meme.
Yeah,
it's like because the track's always lit, you don't need headlights.
Exactly. So it's I didn't obviously experience it when they hadn't finished it, but now it's almost like daylight from the driver's
headlights
seat.
Even on a supercar like candles, really.
Actually, that's true. Yeah, they're not proper headlights.
More for like a distraction of the guy in front, really, as opposed to lighting the track up. And then the interior of the cockpit as well. It's cool to see some of the teams mess about with that because you want to have some light in the cockpit, but we all know what it's like when you're driving along and someone turns the interior light on. It makes visibility outside hard. So there's a bit of a, the night racing always throws a little bit up because there's factors like that you're not having to deal with throughout the season. Like that's something unique, is lighting the cockpit up enough without affecting visibility outside.
Dash settings too, making sure your shift lights are turned down and stuff like that. Because if you leave,
knowing where those buttons are.
Yeah.
In 2019 at the Grand Prix, that race that rained, when I was leading, it got so dark, but I wasn't
when you won, mate.
Yeah, when
not just leading.
I did close the deal that night, but I didn't know where the switch was to dim the dash.
Yeah, right.
And the race started in the daytime, and it was a twilight event, but it got quite dark because it was raining. And I couldn't turn the dash down. So I remember like the reflection off my face was so bright of the shift lights and everything. It was a simple like one button that could have fixed it, but I was under so much pump that I thought I couldn't like take my eyes off the front window.
Stuff it.
So yeah, there are little things like that that'll pop up this weekend that make it interesting, which is why I just wish we did a few. Perth was an amazing track to do night races at. I think we should be doing those.
Yep, Perth was cool.
We always talk about schedule and things like that, the event schedule, but that's a big one. I do think I'd love to see more nighttime races. The thing they've thrown in this weekend is a 90-minute practice session. We're pretty harsh.
Again?
We are very harsh on all these practices. When you consider they got 90 minutes of practice in one session, then a 15-minute qualifying session on Saturday, it is really frustrating.
Or at least just tell us why they do that.
The 90 minutes.
So we can stop talking about it. But there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. But
I feel like there has to be a reason.
There obviously is. They keep it to themselves, obviously.
Yeah, and there is on track Friday. There's a lot of support categories and things, but they start quite early. And like, if I guess they've put supercars late on the Friday night to give the competitors a chance to see the track. You know, get familiar with visibility and making sure that the track's going to be fine as well, that everything's lit properly and it's going to be okay.
And look, maybe they thought, 90 minutes. I think it starts at 5, does it, on Friday?
The practice session, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe they thought, look, if we do a long session, people can finish work quickly, grab the kids from school and then go and maybe get out there. Maybe that's why it's such a long session, so it rolls into sort of 6:30. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
I'd still love to see like 3 20-minute sessions or something like that on a Friday night. It doesn't have to be on track the whole time, because I think that the shame for the crowd is, one, you can't follow it anyway because it's not like a normal session where
people are cruising.
So you want to know in a short period, where are the leaders, where's everyone at? So I think give them plenty of tyres for the night. I would love to have just seen 3 short practice sessions. Gives the guys time to think about it between, but also keeps it interesting for the guys on the couch or the guys and girls at the track that want to, go and see the action. And the other thing that when looking up, so previewing the weekend, the Saturday is a big day. 11 o'clock is the first fan experience.
I see they're doing a pit lane thing, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's always, Darwin, I think they do it as well.
Do they normally do that in the morning, like a pit lane walk before the race?
They've done it at a few events now. Like Darwin, I always remember, is a big one. It's very popular, and as a driver, it's nice. You just sit in the sun and get rid of this Melbourne tan for an hour and meet the fans. But the thing is, at Sydney, they've done it at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's then 8.5 hours until the race on Saturday night. So taking out of that, okay, we get there's qualifying and a top 10 shootout.
It's a big day, isn't it?
But it's a long day. When you think there's only a 15-minute qualifying and a 30-minute shootout session in 8.5 hours, because, okay, the support categories are there, but they're not really why people are coming to the track. They're coming to the track to see the...
People love us, the supports.
Adelaide 500.
Backbone of Australian motorsport.
I'm only going to Adelaide 500 because you'll be there, mate, in the Trans Am. But I think that the supercar action there is a bit spread out. So even the Friday night, I love the idea of a Friday night, but I think the whole event could have been a Friday night, Saturday night. Forgetting Sunday, just Friday night, Saturday night.
And that lends to you saying they've only got one night race this year. I think if they did go to those 2-day meetings, it forces the night events too.
Yes.
If they did more 2-day events, which I know you've pushed a bit, that then forces, because you've got to run into the night, right? So you can fit everything in. So I think if they experiment with that, hopefully next year we'll get more night races on the calendar.
Yeah, definitely. And just quickly before I do move on from the sports, because they are still important for the day, but we do have Porsche Carrera Cup, Super Utes, Touring Car Masters, and the TGRA Cup, the Toyota
and
Racing.
National Sports Sedans are there as well, which will be good. So they've actually got...
missed that in my homework.
No, that's all right. That's what I'm here, mate. I'll pick up the crumbs. But it's actually, when you look at it, they're good supports.
They are. And I think one of the sessions of Porsche leads into I think it might be Sunday's qualifying session for the supercar. Oh, no, it's the night race, for the first night race. So Porsche's on before that. So
they want that Michelin rubber down.
One thing I love going out of pit lane straight after the Porsches, because like you said, the Michelin rubber is the best to drive on. It's cool that at night we're going to see them roll out on the Porsche rubber. The track is notorious for high deg, but as the temperature cools down overnight, the deg gets better. So they'll start the race on good rubber.
As those first couple of laps.
Mate, they'll be flying.
Cool night air, engines make good horsepower, the track's high grip, plus it's on the Porsche rubber. They'll be...
Yeah, that first stint is going to be mega.
Setting some speed.
And then the second stint, obviously people are going to start to push it because, deg will get better. But I think the first stint might not even be so bad anyway, because the Porsche rubber is going to help that for sure. But then into the format, what do we got for the races on the weekend?
Yeah, so both races, again, the old rinse and repeat. We love that. 51 lappers, so 200 Ks.
Yep.
It's a fair old stint round there. You reckon?
We've done 300k races around there before, a single driver.
Okay.
It's boring as batshit, but we have done 300k races.
The problem is, I guess, with the long stuff there, isn't it? If it is, I mean, they're twilight/night races, but if there is high tide deg, you do just end up, you can only drive the thing so fast, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. I think, yeah, as you touched on, being night races, it'd probably help with the deg, hopefully.
Yep. I'd love to see a late safety car if we can order one of those, please.
Okay.
Please, Beardo.
Maybe a little bit of rain again. It worked in Townsy. If we get a bit of a drizzle too.
Well, when I was looking back at last year's results, I saw there was a late safety car. I was one of the unlucky ones that got caught out by it. I went pretty early.
Right.
And it was
Sound like you.
looking good. He actually is. I'm a late comer. But but we went aggressive, went early, and then tried to lengthen that final stint. The safety car came with like 10 laps to go. And yeah, one of the guys that got lucky out of there was Shane. He qualified 19th, but come through on Saturday.
Saw that.
So yeah, a late safety car I think would be very good if we can order one of those, please.
Yep.
But yeah, the 51 laps, I think Sydney Motorsport Park is a tricky place because deg is high, which usually breeds good racing, but then it's a track that's hard to pass on. And if you are nursing tyres, you're not able to really do very much because if you try and push, you're gonna heat them up.
I've always found just in the things that I've raced that, yeah, although there's a couple of decent passing spots, because of the deg, it can sometimes create dull
racing. Yeah.
So
They're all high-speed corners too, which makes
then there's not a lot of slow stuff. Like really turn 2 is a good one. And kind of really, you can make some things happen in other parts, but you're relying on someone to make a mistake, which as we know in supercars, everyone's so good, mistakes are getting rarer and rarer. So
I know we shouldn't change the rules of the driving standards event to event, but I'd love to see them a bit more relaxed at a place like Sydney because typically to get a move done, you're moving someone out the way at Sydney. Like turn 2, you got to lean on them, but it actually breeds good racing because like turn 2, for instance, you get into the rear bar of someone, you get down the inside, they can hang there and you're on the outside for 3 and 4. So, by moving someone out the way there doesn't always work out for you, but then it creates good overlap racing like
Same with 3, and if you get on someone's rear bar right at the bump of 3, they've got to lift the throttle, then you get the run into 4.
You get the run into 4. Yeah. And so I think that, of course we do tend to see at Sydney people getting squeezed out of road on exit, and that's one thing I really don't like that. Like I like
There's
it when you can go side by side door banging with someone for 3 or 4 corners. That's a cool feeling and it looks awesome on TV. When someone just walks you out of road on the exit, it takes no skill for one, and it just ruins the battle. Yeah. But I do reckon Sydney's a place where I hope Beardo puts his hands in his pockets a bit and lets people
sort it out a bit.
Yeah, let's race aggressive and try and breed some exciting stuff.
So 51 laps, mate. What's that going to be? Just a 2-stop, or will that be similar to Townsville where it could open up but potentially a 3-stop strategy?
I think a 2-stopper.
Depends on deg, I guess, really, doesn't it?
2-stopper, but it's still 200k, so it will open up. There'll be the chance of a 3.
Yeah.
And a late safety car is huge. Like how many laps to go?
They breed them, don't they? Safety cars breed safety cars.
We've heard that a few times. But I think that as well, a late safety car, depending on where you are in the train, Sydney is a place that you can pass. So
if you've got a tyre advantage, for sure.
So do you pit? If you're outside the top 10, do you take a late safety car? But it will be interesting. I think it's a long enough race to see something like that happen. They've extended from 140k on Sunday to 200k this year. So last year was a slightly shorter race on Sunday, and it was earlier in the day as well. It started at 3 p.m. This year it starts at 4:55 or something like that.
4:05 is the Sunday race.
Yes, it does too. It starts at 4:05. So it's a little bit later. But I think that the 200k race on Sunday, I'd probably like to see it if Saturday wasn't again the same format. I think we're going to run into the same issue we had at Townsville. I think Saturday's going to be a boring race. Sunday's going to be a boring race.
I think they need to keep the longer version on the Sunday. So maybe they should have done a slightly shorter, sort of harder, faster race maybe Saturday for the action-packed one or something, or maybe even 2 short ones on Saturday or something. But
Saturday I think is the perfect day to have multiple sprint races and a night race to finish it because, the 8.5 hours between the fan walk and the first race of a supercar.
They could have slept.
It's a big day there. You can't go bragging about having qualifying in a top 10 shootout. We all know that the fans are sick of seeing these shootouts because all the feedback we've had is there's too many of them, so they don't have the star power anymore. They're not like making a top 10 shootout used to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Now it's like, he's had 75 top 10 shootouts. Well, no shit, because there's 15 or 20 a year.
The last 2 seasons.
So it's like, there's so many every event. So I think Saturday you could get rid of the top 10 shootout. There's 30 minutes back already. and then the fans don't have to wait 8.5 hours at the track to see a supercar race.
I like the idea of 2 short races on, say, a Saturday, because it's an extra race start and it's an extra first lap. And what I mean by that is it spices up the championship, because the potential of something to go wrong is, again, elevated. So we saw it with Will Brown at Townsville. You know, when he didn't qualify great and he was in that mid-pack, championship leader got put in the fence.
Yeah.
So you add that opportunity for the championship to be closer, or at least a bit spicier, by throwing in an extra race start a weekend.
Something that I think went under the radar at the Grand Prix, and why that's such a success, those sprint races, is because when you have 4 races on a weekend, all of a sudden one race win is only worth 75 points.
Yeah.
So it means that if you have a DNF in one of the 4, the penalty in your championship is not that big, right? It's because it minimises the amount of points you lose by having more races. So when we look at Bathurst and Sandown, they're races that if something goes wrong, it shapes your championship, because one race is 300 points. So most people would be a little bit more conservative. But if you were to slap 3 races on the Sydney Motorsport Park weekend, Saturday's only worth 150 points still, but it's 2 races. So if you have a crack and you have a crash on Saturday in one of the races, you haven't lost 150.
Yeah.
You've lost potentially 75. So I think the more sprint races you have, they breed better racing, because I think the points risk is less. So people take more risk. And that's why I would like to see more of that.
Yeah.
I think that went a little bit unnoticed at the Grand Prix, or maybe we did, because we didn't really talk about it either. It's something I thought about today, was when you do break down the points across more races, you're more inclined to take risk.
Yeah, it's less of a chunk if you have that one bad event. Yeah,
you make one mistake, it's not such an issue. They have been pumping it up as 2 night races. I did see, like, supercars have said yes, it's a twilight race on Sunday, but they've tried to pump it up by going an hour later on Sunday with the race. It will finish well and truly into the dark, but it's very much a twilight. It starts at 4, sunsets at 5.
Yep.
So at Sydney, that's a tricky place to do it, a twilight race, because the sun sets as you're leading into turn 1. That's where it's in your eye. So there's a good 10-lap window there where visibility as a driver is quite a challenge.
I guess it's on a Sunday, so they can't run it too late, I think. But
yeah, definitely, obviously people are going to start bailing, and I still think as well, though, that brings me back to a really condensed Friday night, what I'd love to see, and then Saturday, nothing on Sunday.
Go home.
Get out of there, go home. The weather. Someone asked on the live show, I'm going all out on this one, this pre-brief.
Nice little slide you've made too.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. This weekend I've got the 888 brief sent through to me. So
you've been copying and pasting, have you? I thought it looked pretty professional.
My homework has been an A+, but I'm not going to lie, I've cheated my ass off through this pre-brief. But one thing that came up in the live stream we did a couple of weeks ago, someone asked about the weather, and I'm like, we really should have known that. We had no idea, but it is looking fine. We don't have to go through the details, but we've got a little bit of cloud and then sunshine. So I was bummed. I was hoping to see a little bit of rain, just to sneak in there a bit. But
you know what? These things are always wrong, mate.
Mate, it's my pre-brief. Nothing's going to be wrong here. I'm 100% correct, right? We're going to get 3 days of slightly overcast.
Being a weatherman is the only job you can constantly be wrong and still get paid.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's fair. But the weather looks fine, unfortunately, but hopefully we still see a couple of safety cars to make spice it up.
Western Sydney, you never know what's going to happen. But let's dive into some of the 2023 things that happened.
Yeah, there was a few interesting things there. And we said in our last pod, there's going to be tracks that suit manufacturers over other ones. And we saw the Darwin event was Camaro Cup. A lot of people were calling it. And then we went to Townsville and it looked like the Mustangs were back. We had one real standout, which was Jack LeBrock in the Camaro at Townsville.
Yep.
But then looking back at 2023, I know things have changed. The aero package has changed and things like that. So hopefully it's different. But there was only 3 Fords in the top 10 on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I noticed that too, mate. I thought, that's when you looked at it at a glance, you're like, oh, Ford's a shit there. But then, when you look back at it too, Chaz was in second and Cam was in 5th.
Yeah.
So again, were the Fords that much slower, or was the Ford teams as a whole just not doing as well? So
in saying that, Cam qualified quite well. Saturday qualified 3rd. Chaz was P9. So he only just stuck in the top 10. So we nearly had nine Camaros with one Ford. So Cam, we see it a fair bit. I don't think he gets as much credit as he probably should over his 1-lap speed. We laughed about it when he came on the pod. He had like 26 pole positions or something. So the guy can qualify. And he was last year, I know he had bad luck and they didn't finish as the Ford team. But this was an event where I'm like, all year they actually were the fastest Ford team. They did much better than Walkinshaw last year, but they had the fire at Darwin when they're leading the race, things like that. And Sydney was a place where yeah, he did well to keep the Ford up there, but I think we might be in for a Camaro Cup. I feel like this might be a track that suits Camaro again, is my prediction.
Yeah, interesting. I would have just, without looking at anything, would have gone, it'll be Camaro, and based upon Triple 8's history with tyre life.
Yeah,
because we've touched on it before. We know how bad Sydney can be for tyre deg. But then it was interesting going through the stats that you put forward, because they didn't necessarily, Triple 8 didn't dominate there last year by any means. So,
to be fair, they actually struggled quite a bit.
Surprised me. Like one of the days, I think Shane qualified 19th or something, didn't he?
He did, yeah, Sunday.
Yeah.
Saturday qualified 19th.
20th, actually, there he was, yeah. So, because we know how great they are at tyre life, and that place is just, we know it's really bad for it. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. But I think,
I'm interested to see what articles come out of the weekend, because BJR was saying they're going to look into, after Townsville, the breakdown of Andre Heimgartner's success that he's been having, that run of success. Yeah. But looking back at Sydney, and this is, it's the one thing that really does frustrate me about the sport, is like drivers don't forget, and that's why we have the who forgot, who remembered mistake. But Andre last year polled, and BJR has been very fast. They used to run a very soft platform, and it just seemed to work at Sydney Motorsport Park. And I remember back, Jack Smith 2 years ago was running in the 10, and they have not anything against Jack, but that was a place where he did well. And I'm like, he had a really tough year and was a standout, I think, in the BJR car, and they polled last year.
They've obviously got a good recipe there, because you look at last year's quali on Saturday.
Yep.
You had Heimgartner, Andre was on pole, but then you had Bryce Forward in 6th.
Yeah.
So BJR they've obviously got a nice little setup for SMP.
Yeah, I think the articles are going to be like, we found something, we went soul searching, which we heard about. I think it was Cam went soul searching after Darwin. But I think that they'll be the same. It'll be a rerun with different titles on the headline, on the articles. I think we're going to see, my pick would be that we will see Andre back up there, which would be great, because BJR are a team, I feel like they won the punches above their weight, actually. Small team out of Albury.
100%. Like, they run 4 cars. They're not they don't have as many resources as some of the other teams.
Yep.
They always win the pit stop challenge. Like, their crew are amazing at what they do. And I think, they punch well above their weight for, obviously the resources they've got. But, it'll be good to see how they go. And if they back it up, I mean, historical data generally doesn't lie.
No,
exactly. Teams, like, generally they click at places, and they'll continue to click regardless of, as you said, regardless of who's in their cars, because the drivers don't forget how to steer a car. So
the one thing, I honestly reckon it's going to be good to see what Triple 8 do this weekend, because I'm not actually picking. I picked them after Townsville. I thought they'll bounce back, but after spending a day looking through results, and they weren't that strong in qualifying, but with a track that's such high deg, I reckon they've got a chance of coming through the field again and getting a result in the races. But I don't think they're actually going to be a standout in qualifying. They may prove me wrong, and I hope they do, because I'll be there with them, and I don't want to be, I want to be walking to the front of the grid, not the back of it. I've done that too many times in my life.
A couple of interesting things too from that is Jack LeBrock was fast here last year too when he was at MSR.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in the Erebus car.
So it was Cameron Hill.
And Cam Hill. So, and Percat historically has been, I think he's had a win or a podium there. He's been pretty strong there. So now that he's at MSR, it looks like, looking at quali anyway, MSR had a bit of speed in those things last year, because both of them were in the 10.
It'll be interesting, like, after looking at today, and it could completely prove me wrong, but it is usually about, I haven't ever actually been wrong yet, but
no.
Only
I've noticed that, mate. Yeah.
It's the fortunate thing of editing these
podcasts. I reckon our viewers are starting to notice that too.
Yeah, the fortunate thing with editing this podcast is I can get rid of any blunder of my own, but I reckon we'll see BJR bounce back.
Yeah.
And I think MSR is going to be strong with Percat.
I'd love to see Hill on the podium there. And he does, I know it doesn't really matter because everyone's great everywhere they go, but he does do a lot of laps there. Like in coaching and stuff like that.
Is he still coaching now?
Because he still runs his own team. Like he's got a kid in Formula Ford and stuff.
That's right. Yeah, he does.
So he's always seems to be out there doing some stuff, and it's kind of his home track when he was a junior, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think if they turn up with the car speed they had last year, I reckon Hill might be a good chance of his first podium.
Yeah, okay. I got a feeling it's going to be tough for Shell this weekend. I think they're going to have a really, I don't know, if Ford hasn't fixed things.
Interesting, the things that came out about, you would have seen the articles about Anton. There was a couple of articles coming out saying, does he need to change his scenery? Is he happy there? It was actually, I hadn't really thought about it, but it'd be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, Anton was he was in the top 10 there last
Yeah,
year.
he did get. But I mean, what's a change of scenery do for you, really? Like, this is where sometimes journalists and that like to speculate on a driver's mental health or where they're at, and how that's affecting them driving. But they're still, between Will and Anton, they're very close. I know Will was a bit of a standout at Townsville between the two, but they're very close. Like, I don't know. There's speculation of him going to Groves, but just because you're friends with someone doesn't mean you're going to all of a sudden start driving better. I think if the car's a shitbox, he's still going to struggle.
Yeah.
And I actually think Matt Payne is going to be a tough one to go up against. Like, if I was Anton, it's not going to be a slam dunk just going over to Groves and thinking you're going to be the lead driver.
We've seen that with Richie. Richie's a fantastic driver, and
we're seeing him struggle. So, honestly, I think Anton will be focusing on his own backyard and making sure that he's doing what he can at Sydney this weekend, because I reckon he can. Looking at last year, I think he can get one up on Will again, and that will do a lot for him.
Well, I mean, regardless, whether he's happy there or not, whether he's going to move or not next season doesn't really matter. But the only way he can make sure he's in a good car next year, if he does move, is by winning races or beating his teammate. Exactly. So there's no doubt he's going to go out and try and do his best. Yeah. Because that's the only way you get your next deal, right, is by results.
Yes, exactly right.
Another thing that's making or what's happening this weekend is Lockie Dalton's debuting as a wild card. His first supercar drive, which is pretty cool. So Tickford are rolling out another car and they're going to run a wild card program.
I think we need to get anyone listening to the pod to start a petition to get you in a wild card.
Oh, you reckon?
I do. I'm like, he ran Trans Am for a year.
He did a couple of years in Trans Am.
Yeah.
He's done a couple of years now in Super 2.
Yeah, right. I think, the sad thing is, unless you're not, for your situation is, unless you're in Super 2, it's so hard to get a start. But Super 2, you're looking at kids paying $100,000 a weekend, and it's hard to find sponsors to be able to do that. So, in your situation, I personally would love to see you do it, and I see people like Lockie get a start. And today, the first thing I thought was, when I was looking through what he has done and what his track record is, even versus you in the same category. It does show there's all these good people up and down categories in Australia, and not to blow smoke up your ass, but I think that the wild card is an amazing opportunity for someone to get a run in the main series. We saw what Cooper could do. I'm looking forward to seeing what Lockie will do.
Yep.
I would love to see a sponsor take a hold of this thing and run multiple drivers throughout the year as a wild card. So, someone does it as their car. I know there's a limit on how many a team can do for, throughout a year. I think it's 3 is all you can do.
It's exactly like what kickstarted Shane's NASCAR career, was that Trackhouse's project. They had that car and they were running name drivers, had a couple of F1 drivers and stuff. They had Shane jump in. If Supercars took that on and they had a car sitting there that someone ran and sponsored, and it was, even if they were just star guests and stuff, just to create that buzz, I think that'd be a cool thing to see.
I think so. And Lockie hasn't had a lot of press around this, but I think a full campaign, which is what we've seen Super Cheap grab a hold of and do a really good job of. They actually, I'm sure they're spending a lot more on the marketing budget than they are on the program itself, because you have to. It's like if you create a TV commercial, say it costs you $100,000, you spend $1 million on ad spend. It's not like the cost of the ad itself is not the expensive bit, it's promoting it. And that's what you need a sponsor to do that really well. But I think if Supercars, it was just one of those things. When I saw Lockie come up today, it inspired me to be I was thinking about Supercars could do more with this wildcard opportunity and almost allocate a wildcard to a team and help that team with sponsors, which would benefit the sponsors of the category as well. And we would actually get to see, if the cars ran properly, we would get to see guys running top 3 in multiple categories do a good job. And I reckon what you'll get out of that is teams have more confidence selecting drivers from outside of Super 2, because it will give credibility to guys like yourself in Trans Am. It will give credibility to someone coming up that's young in a 86. That's, say the 86 guy wins that championship, he gets a wild card the following year. There's got to be incentives that help these kids prove what they can do in a supercar.
Yeah, 100%. And the biggest problem with Super 2 is a lot of the teams push it because that's where they run their old gear, and that's how they top up their budgets and all that sort of stuff. And so it's always hard because they're always going to try and funnel people through there, because otherwise if they don't do that, let's say you didn't have to do Super 2 to be a Coe or to do that stuff, Super 2 would probably die almost overnight because it's so expensive to run. If people go, I could go run Carrera Cup, I could go run Trans Am or something else, Super whatever it is, and still be recognised. And then...
Well, I had a team principal, I won't say who it was, but he was a team principal of a supercar team, no longer say that you could run a Super 2 team competitively for around $400,000.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at $100,000 a weekend for 7 events. Like, and they don't have staff of 20, full time like a supercar team. So the $100,000 a weekend, I think it's expensive, but I think the reason they can charge is because the kids know they have to do it because a supercar team's not going to look at them otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's a thing. It's something that I consider, like even when I was full-time, who you choose, it's kind of like, well, you're mitigating a bit of risk by going, okay, they're racing supercars. And when it wasn't Gen 3, it was very similar.
Yeah.
But then you do see some kids get in and do a good job. You look at Ryan Wood come out of, was he Porsche, I think the year before he ran Super 2, and he went in and won races straight away. I come from the first year I ran Bathurst. I'd driven Formula 3 and I had done a few rounds in supercars and I went to Bathurst. So you just need someone to give you a shot.
It's actually the same with Lockie's teammate, Rylan Gray, really young guy.
Yeah,
I think Ryan's 18 or something, and he's at Tickford. And so far this year he's been toweling up Lockie and Brad Vaughan, and it's his first season.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done a lot of racing. So to your point, I think if someone's good and they know how to drive a car and they've got that feel of a tyre and where the grip is, within a test day at Winton or wherever it is, they'll be on the money if they're good enough.
Definitely. And I know that it's a little bit off topic from previewing Sydney and obviously Lockie making his debut. I don't want to take away from that or talk about something else. I genuinely think it's a great idea, these wild cards, and we've talked about bringing more cars in. I do think the field needs to stay small because you don't want to take away from, you might say that some guys don't deserve to be there on talent, but they deserve to be there because they work hard, they raise the funds, and they've got the sponsors together because guarantee there's not a lot of them that can afford $1 million every single year to go racing. Most of it is sponsors. So you got to give credit to the guys that are good enough to bring in sponsors and then get themselves on the grid. So I think increasing the field takes away from that, as well as, the ability, like the top guys getting a seat. But if you had someone, and it could be a supercar run wild card, I'm just throwing it out there, I think you could select 2 or 3 drivers from each category. Like Trans Am's a good one where the cars aren't that different anymore. Really, they're
speed-wise, they're not. I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I think you could run some rotating sponsors through there that might be category sponsors, and then you give kids a shot, and it would put some names on the radar of teams that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. So it just come up, and so Lockie Dalton, good luck this weekend.
Yeah,
and hopefully
good luck, mate.
you've sparked a bit of a conversation about maybe more, because I think Cooper Murray proved that putting people in out of Super 2 and stuff is a good opportunity.
To be honest, the ones that have always done the wild cards, they've always done a really good job. So you look back at it, Jordan Boys did it with Image a few years ago, and they ran they were in
Bathurst.
Yeah, I think it was at the Bend too when Zach Best put it on pole. I know there was some tyre stuff.
Tyre scandal, we will throw that in there. But he was still qualified 15th or 14th the next day on the right tyre set. And
I think Jordan was the same. I think he was actually up the road on Zach the next day, but they were just out of the 10.
Yep.
Like they were 12th, 13th, doing a great job. We saw what Cooper's done.
Yep.
So I think every time they come and do it, to your point, it shows there are some people out there that can do it.
Put them through the program too. Make them do all of the PR events, do the corporate. Yep. And who knows, you might end up with a guy who can steer a race car, build a relationship with a sponsor, and the sponsor goes, fuck, I really like this young lad, or, I'm going to give him a shot next year, or I might support him. And because it's not easy to find sponsors. So I don't know. I was just thinking about opportunities and ways you could change what we are doing currently in a wildcard thing where look at what it's done for Cam Waters and Will Brown in NASCAR. And then, of course, Shane, now he's set up for life in another country.
And if supercars ran it too, they'd be able to park some of their sponsors that are doing sign sponsors and other things on a race car, actually on a car. So it's a value add to supercars because all the partners they've got now, it's like, hey, do you want to be part of this program? Sweet.
You know what's great? It might have been something they were thinking of, but I guarantee they'll put it in the bin now that we've said it because they definitely don't. They're not fans of mine, but we
just killed that idea.
Yeah, there goes. I'm sorry about everyone that might have got a shot, but actually, I think it would be cool. I'm only just thinking of it now. Pop in the comments who you think.
Yeah, who would you want to see do a wild card? If regardless of what category they're in, just who would you love to see do a wild card in supercar somewhere, and how do you reckon they'd run?
Yeah, and
I just know what you think.
I don't want to hear so much about international drivers though in the comments because a lot of people said like a Kyle Larson. Of course, they're no-brainers, but
Aussies.
There's a lot of fans here in
Kiwis.
Australia that have actually asked you and I to stream support categories. So we know people are following the support categories, and it doesn't have to be Super 2. Like it can be the Toyota Gazoo Racing Series or something like that, because there are good lads, but it's bloody hard if you're not doing Super 2 to get someone to have confidence in you and back you for a shot.
And it's really hard too for people to understand how good people are in the supports. And I guess for me, it's easy for me to see because I've spent my whole racing career just in support categories. Yeah. So for me, I know exactly how, like anyone that is running in the top 3 to 5 in any national category, they can drive a race car.
Yeah.
You know, they're very good at what they do. It doesn't matter what.
I mean, I went back and did the Grand Prix this year in the Porsche, and I knew it was going to be tough. And I went in, qualified 5th and qualified 3rd, and I would have loved to have done better. Like I was like a bit bummed, but it's really tough. Like, I mean, I was pretty surprised. I mean, the racecraft with the young guys, you can definitely see after being in supercars where they're lacking a little bit, and that will come. But their one lap speed, I'm like, fuck. When I qualified 5th on Saturday, wherever it was. There was nothing in it, like the top 4. And the reason I qualified 3rd really was only because they took your fastest first and second lap.
Yeah, consistent.
And the consistency of the young lads wasn't quite there. So I actually got my second quali was 3rd. I wasn't actually the 3rd fastest out there, but it does show the depth in the field. I've been full-time in supercars for 11 years and I didn't qualify in the front row in a support category. So, yeah, I don't know. And Porsche is one of those ones like who was my teammate that weekend? So Harry Jones.
Harry Jones.
Fantastic driver.
Yeah.
But he said on the weekend when I was teammates with him at Grand Prix, he's like, I can't get anyone to take a punt on me as a co-driver. No one will because I haven't done. They keep saying I got to do Super 2. But all of his partners only support him to do Porsche. He doesn't have the money to do Super 2. Yeah. So,
and that's always the tricky thing. It doesn't suit everyone to do Super 2, as in from a finance point of view.
Exactly. But anyway, back to it. Lockie has done. Lockie Dalton as well was a protege of Marcus Ambrose in karting. So he's
got a lot of good people around him. I've got no doubt he'll be like all the other wild cards we've seen. If the car's up to it,
where's your guess? Where's he going to qualify on Saturday?
I will say at some point he'll be in the top 15 in qual.
He's in Tickford, isn't he?
Yeah. If they roll out a decent
I reckon it's going to
program,
be tough just because of the Ford. I reckon looking at what happened last year, but I reckon he has the ability to be between the 15 and the 20 mark. And 20 at Shane qualified 20th last year. So come on.
Yeah, it's not
saying between 15 and 20 is no slate on the young lad himself.
No. Look, I'm sure he'll do a great job and I think it'll be he'll have a ball, mate. It's good experience, so good on him.
Yeah. Good luck, Lockie. One of the things that come out this year, always does, mid-year, we're 6 rounds in with 6 to go, head-to-head battles between the teammates.
Yeah.
There was a few standouts there that I thought were pretty impressive. One of the ones that I'll jump down the order first because I've got a few in here, but one of the ones I want to give a shout out to is Cameron Hill's doing a great job, 7-7 in qualifying against Percat. Percat's had a massive rap this year about his bounce back in form.
Yep.
But not enough, I think, has been said about Cameron Hill going equal in qualifying to Nick.
Having watched Cam in supports when he was coming up, he's a talent. Yep. Like I think he's really fast. Yep. So, yeah, that didn't surprise me. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that pans out by the end of the year because Nick definitely can't just rest on his heels there. He'll be pushing. Like Cam will be pushing Nick.
Yeah.
And Cam's got a lot of technical knowledge too around the car as well, which Nick has as well. So I think together they'll push that team up. But yeah, interesting that really he's only in his second season, Cam Hill. So it's a good effort.
It is definitely, and we know that Sydney's a place now. Looking back at last year, that he had a really good run with top 10 at Sydney. So this is going to be another weekend that's tough for Percat to get one up on him in quali. It's going to be a top battle, I think.
Other one that was interesting that if you were to just go off what the perception is, you would think Golding has pumped Slade this season. Yeah. But it's actually very close. It's 8-6, and in the races it's 7-6. So they're essentially even Stevens.
And I did put that. I didn't make notes on every head-to-head because some I just don't know that are that relevant. But the head-to-head between Slade and Golding I thought was really important because Golding at Darwin, they're screaming about this guy is an absolute superstar of our sport. Yeah. And we haven't really heard about Slade in a long time. Like, people forget Slade qualified 3rd at Taupo and got taken out at the start of the race, or 4th, I think, qualified. But he's been doing just as good as Golding.
And at the start, there was Slade came out saying, I was half considering leaving halfway through this year if I didn't improve my form.
Yeah.
So, to that point, he's matching someone that they're classing as one of the fastest in the field.
Well, for some reason, commentary teams always pick someone to watch, and if you're not that guy, if you're not, it does come down to as well still the driver doing something sexy on track. You got to be a bit of a standout. You got to make bold moves and do things that make people take notice.
Why we're seeing a lot of funny haircuts? It's for the sexiness, is it?
I kind of do think I honestly think there's a bit of that. Like, mate, Nick Dacos in the AFL went back to his normal haircut, and you couldn't even spot him on the field.
Yeah, right.
Dacos has come back the next week with his head shaved again on the sides, and all of a sudden he is the Nick Dacos again. So
for Bathurst, what are you going to do? Shave a mohawk in or something, mate, or get a mullet going?
I reckon just the dirty mo. like clean shaven.
Go the Dale Earnhardt. I'm with you.
Clean shaven, and I've got a bit of ginger too, so it would look.
Bit of straubs.
It'd be interesting.
Well, red's fast, so it'll work.
Something like, but no, I do think there's something about a driver that stands out to commentary teams, and Golding this year has been that. But it's good for us to dig a bit deeper.
Yeah.
Because you've got the luxury of time. It's not like on a weekend where you're under the pump like the commentary team is to pick someone, and Slady has done a very good job.
Yep. The other interesting thing too is Brock's been in front of Will a lot in qualifying versus, and again
9.5, I think.
The optics of that, I think everyone's thinking, oh, Will's dominating, but Brock's actually been better in qual form. Will's just raced better.
Well, the pressure's been on Brock to respond to the pace of Will, and Will has. It's 9.5 in qualifying in Brock's favour.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because...
It's a lot. It's nearly double.
It highlights how good Will's race pace has been, I think. You know, and I know that they aren't qualifying. They're not qualifying 5th and 20th, right?
No,
They're qualifying,
that's right, yeah.
It's
second and
splitting
third,
hairs.
first and second, yeah.
Like Darwin, I think... Bathurst was like first, second every practice session. So it's very close. But I can tell you now, Will look at that and it will hurt. Like we all... Mate, it didn't matter if I was 7-6 to my teammate at a loss. It fucking hurts. You're like...
Especially qual too, because qual is like, who's fastest? Who is the faster driver?
Yeah.
You know, like racing, there can be racecraft, there can be luck, there can be strategy, all that stuff. But qualifying is like if you stick on pole, you're like, I am the fastest. Like
that means a lot.
You know, it's a real little sweetener on the ego. So
that's why, you know, looking at it and, you know, I don't really analyse the race results that much. I mean, I do a driver comparison. I almost never look at race results. Like when I look at mine, I had 11 mechanical failures at Team 18 in my second last year.
They're your fault though.
So I go, well, that happens to every driver. So it's very difficult, I think, to look at the end of the season and be like, oh, well, that driver finished more races in front, because who knows what the circumstances were for every driver. Everyone's got their story.
Same set of tyres. Everyone's got new brakes on.
Mate, quality is you've had fucking 7 days of practice in this championship. you got 3 sets of tyres in qualifying. So the lap you lay is the best you've got.
Yeah.
You know, and that, I think, there's a lot of credit that should be given to a driver. So I only ever really analyse qualifying. So my whole notes on a head-to-head had nothing to do with race results, because I don't really know what everyone's story is.
Yeah.
But
and there's so many variables in a race too.
Yeah. And quality for Will, I'm sure he'll want to fix that. 9.5 is that's quite a big gap at the moment. Sydney's a track Will's been very fast at. So who knows this weekend if he can turn that around. Hopefully he can. Because I'm sure he's going to be kicking himself there. And I am sharing 87. It's getting closer and closer. So qualify at the front, stay at the front makes my job easy when I get into Enduros.
Woody and Chaz at WAU. So Chaz is obviously 13-1, so in Chaz's favour. So,
yeah,
you know, probably not that unexpected, because Woody's a rookie. Chaz is like one of the best in the business.
I don't know though. Like, I have a different take on that, because everyone, you know, I know people are saying that Woody's going to be great, and if he does get enough opportunities and stays in a competitive car for long enough, he will be. But say this is F1, 13-1 as a rookie in F1, you're gone, right? Your career's done.
Yeah.
So, and I do look at it just as harsh. Like, I think that Woody, 13-1 in qualifying, I know Chaz is as good as he is, but as a rookie, I think it's got to start to turn where you are qualifying, where you got to be close enough to put pressure on Chaz, where if he locks a wheel, you've got him. Like, I knew that with Frosty a couple of years ago, if I made him the smallest mistake,
he was getting you.
Oh, I was like, fuck, Frosty's going to I just knew. And you're thinking about, you know when you come in and you look at the board, you see your teammate ahead of you, it kicks you in the guts a bit. But he's got to be closer to Chaz so that, you know, and I don't think I actually think they're quite far away in qualifying as well. It's not 13-1 and close splits.
I don't know about all 14 of them, but I know in times when, like Darwin, when Chaz was qualifying poorly, they were like half a tenth apart. Like, they were very close. They were both maximising, obviously, the shit boxes they had. Yep. But, I don't know about them all. So
to be up 13-1, though, not to put down his rookie season, but we're halfway, and I think you need to be closer to your teammate than that.
Well, it highlights the other standout then, doesn't it?
What's the other standout? What am I missing here?
Well, Matty Payne's 13-1 on Richie Stanaway, and we know how good Richie is.
Huge.
So that just tells you how good Matt Payne is, doesn't it?
I know. And, you know, Richie's obviously won Bathurst last year and got not a lifeline, because he's like deserved to get it back, but he's got this shot to come back in. I don't know that car's been as consistent as it should be, but 13-1 means even on a bad day, you're still getting out qualified. Like, you got to try and maximise. Like, if the car's not right, then it comes down, you know, you try and beat your teammate because you got the same equipment, and 13-1 says He's not cutting at the moment.
The numbers don't lie.
Exactly, yeah. And we are far enough in now, you're getting a good indication. Like, it's not like 2 events in or 3 events in. Like, we're midway through the season
14 races in, so.
And he's closer in the races.
Yeah.
But again, Matty Payne's had circumstances like the Grand Prix where he had a DNF. You know, so, again, that's why you got to take those things out of it. Otherwise, you get caught up in trying to explain circumstances we don't totally understand. You're out of here, are you?
Pit stop.
Oh, actually, I need one too. I reckon I was going to make it. I was going to wait. I was thinking I'll wait and wait.
We're still recording, mate?
Yep, still recording. Yep.
Cool.
So there you go. We're through the head-to-heads, and there was a few good standouts in there and ones that we're going to be having a watch going into Sydney Motorsport Park to see who gets one up. For me personally, interested to see if Will starts to close that gap in qualifying. But we had everyone's motorsport army on Facebook run a bit of a comp where people sent in questions. They hashtagged Apex Hunters United, and I went through them today.
Yeah.
Screenshot some of our favourites, and I thought I'd pop them in and give us an opportunity to answer some questions, and we'll read out their handle as well so we know who they're from. But thank you very much to Lisa from everyone's Motorsport Army for organising this, because it's been good to get a few questions in, and we're gonna roll through them now into a bit of a fan segment. Yeah,
so make sure you do join their page too if you're a motorsport fan, because they're a good little group, and they very inclusive, and they share anyone and everyone's motorsport stories. So thank you for following Apex Hunters, guys.
Yeah, so the first one we've got in is from Rowan. First handle, I can't say it. Maysday? Rowan Maysday?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. With the freezing temperatures predicted for Sydney Motorsport Park, which we actually have been through, it's not that cold this year. It's looking like 18 degrees. So Sydney's not looking too bad, but Symmons Plains as well is one they've asked about. So with that in the coming weeks, when do we think would be a better time for these rounds to be held to ensure that the fans actually show up?
Yeah.
When would you like to see
it's a good question.
Tassie run?
Well, we run Symmons Plains in Trans Am. We do it at the start of the year. So we're normally there early March, around that time.
Yeah, right.
And the weather's always beautiful.
Which, I mean, that's...
So...
that was what I was going to say. I think that's when you have to run the event.
Yeah.
But then you got to move the calendar around, which is fine. I think that the Grand Prix, we've got no hope of changing that date. And I think that's like 24th or 5th of March. So then I think that if you come out of, round 1, you make a short turnaround to round 2, which is Tasmania, and then you go into the Grand Prix.
Do you reckon you could start the championship in Tassie, or too small?
Too small.
Not enough of a show.
I think you need to start the championship with a street circuit.
Yep.
Somewhere like even a Perth would be very cool, but then it makes it difficult to do a short turnaround and get to Tasmania. But I think that Tasmania's got to be the second or the third event so that we're in the right time of the year. Yep. It's got to be Feb or March.
Yep.
So, Rowan, that would be
good question.
Our answer there. And the second one, Jeremy Patterson. You can read this one away, Elliot, for me?
So Jeremy Patterson has said, in Speedway, the pole winner can choose either an inside or outside start. Do you think this is something that could work in supercars? Are there any tracks where this would be beneficial due to offline grip, track layout, etc.? So it's a good question, and
it is, yeah.
I think it'd just be cool if you could just choose. Like if the pole driver
I
gets
think more often than not, you're going to choose where it is. Now, one thing that might change that is if we actually did staggered grids like the Grand Prix. So the Grand Prix, I looked that up today as well. We start on the left-hand side, so the outside of turn 1. I think the main reason for that is Formula One, for instance, the starts are so even up and down the grid. You don't really see someone make a bad one. They might lose a spot, but like supercars, it's still left up to the drivers a lot. We don't have any assists or anything like that from the start. So the Grand Prix track, if you start on the left-hand side, in a supercar, it's actually a bit of a disadvantage because by the time we get to 1, often the guy on the right has got a run on you or at least an overlap and you're hung out to dry.
Darwin's one where the pole side's probably not preferred, right?
It's on the inside,
but
it's
usually
a dirty line.
Dirty, isn't it? So that may be one where I think if you were on pole, you'd go, actually, I'll start on the right, not the left.
Yeah, I still think it's very difficult without a staggered grid to ever choose the outside because you only need half a car better start and you've got priority into turn 1, then you've got the inside line. Yeah. So my answer, Jeremy, would be that it wouldn't make a difference in our championship, I guess. Like Elliot is the opposite. He'd love to see that the pole man can choose.
I just think to add a bit of whether they pick the same inside every time, I just think to add a bit of entertainment or a bit of that sort of something different. And then they announce it on telecast, Will Brown's picked the left side of the road or something, so people don't know. It's another thing that, keeps the audience guessing. It may be even just from a trivial point of view like that. I think it could be a good idea.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that
whether it makes actually a difference, like you're saying, I don't know. But yeah.
As a driver, I was always like, I like the staggered starts because it feels like you actually get an advantage of qualifying P9 and not P10.
Yeah.
Like Sydney Motorsport Park's one of those places where Turn 1, you can actually hang it around the outside there. And if
you guys don't do a staggered start anyway, do you?
Only the Grand Prix.
Oh, just GP,
just
right.
the GP. So I would like to see a staggered start, but then from a fan's perspective, I think it's great that we don't do it because it does. We arrive at one side by side, door to door, and it's a bit of a shit
mirrors. Yeah.
But if it was a staggered, you might see a leader choose a different side.
Good question, Jeremy.
A good question there, Jeremy. Next one, Ducati Honda. Are factory teams the same? Apart from last year, why has Red Bull always been so dominant over other teams? And when the cars are so similar, apparently. So why are they more dominant when the cars are as close as they are? Teams like BJR and other teams are very experienced, but don't seem to have the car set up like Red Bull do, etc., year in and year out. And then there's been a reply, actually, and I thought the reply was important to keep on there, but Darren Ross has actually said that money buys the best people, and that's where I do have to disagree because at some point you've got to start from the bottom. Yeah, I'm badass. But at some point I think you've got to start at the bottom, right? No one starts at the top with the most money, and I think that when Roland Dane came out here, what he brought was a level of professionalism that I don't think our championship had really seen, and I think that he implemented a lot of procedures and things that created a very successful team, and then with that success came sponsors. Like Vodafone didn't start on the car.
It's a bit electrical, wasn't it?
It was, but I think every aspect of that team started at such a high level. He would have seen the value in a high-end commercial team, so he would have spent money in the right places, I believe. There's teams up and down pit lane with terrible commercial departments, almost none. So when you say that just because they have more money, they actually aren't investing in the team in the right areas either. And one of the things that I hate the most is when someone says, I think the most overrated statement in the category, in motorsport, is, does it make the car go faster? And I hate that because so many things make the car go faster. It might not just be an upgrade on the car that makes it quicker.
Yeah.
Continuity in the team makes the car faster. Yeah. More budget from sponsorship makes the team faster. There's a load of things that contribute.
I mean, it's team sport, so if the team's harmonious and working well, then it is going to create performance.
Yeah. And in the past, to get back to specifically the question, I think what makes, say, a Triple Eight dominant wasn't just, because they didn't have the manufacturer backing at the start. It was with Holden Racing Team. But they built a sustainable business that allowed them to reinvest in the race team. The race team wasn't their focus on turning that into a profit. That, of course, everyone wants their race team to make a profit, but Jamie and Roland and everyone else there has turned that team into a powerhouse, and they're able to focus on going fast and making sure that every little thing in that race team is perfect. We saw it with Penske, the level they brought in, the detail they did. But that's what I think separates these teams. I think at that level, it's not just about throwing money at it, because we saw how much, Betty and Erebus are probably the wealthiest team in pit lane, and it took them a long time to get the right pieces of the puzzle together. So you can't just go out and buy a piece of another team and expect that to turn into results.
And you're seeing that with Newlon. Pete Zivris is spending money. There's no doubt. You're seeing that with Team 18. Charlie spends a lot of money, no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's still, so it is more than just spending money.
And it's more than an individual. Once you build a good team, people can leave, right? Like engineers change, mechanics change, and the success, it does baffle me. I'm right there with you, Ducati Honda, though. It's not an easy answer, because I don't completely understand how Triple Eight's had the success they have. I go up and I see, when I did the test day, I did ring my mechanic at Team 18 and my engineer, and I felt bad for him because the resources he had no hope of competing against those guys. But they do so many things right. It's not just the one thing. And so I can't really say, like, what is it exactly? It's like every little 1% that they do well.
Yeah. Processes and, things like that also. But, to your point, people, it's not just people, because if your business relies just on certain people, it's not a very sustainable business model, because people can leave businesses.
Well, it's got to be a diversified group.
Any time. Exactly. There's got to be more than just the people. The people obviously make a great business, but it's got to be just more than that as well.
Yeah, exactly right.
Michael Stumpy Osman, and he has commented, we all know supercars need to have a longer season. with a massive shake-up to the format. He must be listening to the show. What tracks would you like to see come back to the calendar, and what format would you like to see at those tracks? Pardon me. Phillip Island, Winton, maybe 2 rounds at the Bend, running the 2 different layouts.
Yeah,
What's your thoughts on that, mate?
Well, I did note down the ones we're currently not at with Winton, Phillip Island, Queensland Raceway. You bring those straight back. Like, I think that permanent tracks, they are the lifeblood of our sport, particularly a place like Winton. I used to love seeing the campers come there. And
where the big fan bases are too, like Country Victoria, out sort of in the sticks, is where you get your hardcore motorsport fans that do want to pack a swag and a esky full of piss and go watch some racing.
Yeah, exactly right. So you got to bring the permanent ones back. With Perth bringing in the street track, I would like to see them keep Barbagallo though. So the ones we're not at, they're
WA double header, mate. You heard it here first.
It's a long way away. There's no shame in staying over there for a double header. Honestly, I think if you could, you would. And then
you noted Hampton Downs.
I did, because it's not one that isn't on our calendar, and it never has been. But I think that
it's a good facility.
You go to New Zealand and you want to do 2 events over there.
Yeah, you go that far, you got to do 2. And I know we touched on it a while ago, and I think they're even thinking about it. But Highlands,
yes, Highlands. I mean, actually, Highlands
would be sick.
Highlands was what I actually meant to write that down as well, because Highlands has been the one that most have talked about. And I did mean, we go Taupo and Highlands.
Yeah. And look, look, Hampton Downs is it's a great circuit. It's not far from Auckland, but I think because the championship is mainly based in Australia, when you are going to go to New Zealand or other parts of the world, it needs to be a destination. Where the South Island of New Zealand is so picturesque and beautiful.
Yeah, yep.
A lot of Aussies would probably go, you know what, I'm gonna take the wife and the kids over for a holiday, and we're going to tack on the weekend. We're going to go racing.
That's how you get away with the racing. You
got to sell it. Yeah, you tell the wife, you go, look, we'll go to the wineries and stuff, but on Sunday and Saturday, I'm just going to head out to the track for a couple of hours.
But yeah, so I want to see more double headers. I think if we're going to condense the championship, I don't actually think we need to condense it anyway. I think we just have too many gaps. Like, I think that starting when we do and finishing, say, at the end of November would be great, but then having more events in between. So you bring those 3 permanent tracks back. We throw a Highlands in there as well. That way you've got a double header in New Zealand.
Yep.
And you end up with just more races on the calendar.
With Phillip Island, I love Sandown being the Sandown 500, but Phillip Island could be a good one where you could have a 3rd enduro, because remember when it was at Phillip Island enduro?
Yep.
I always thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I think Phillip Island struggled as a single driver event.
Yeah.
And so I think that an endurance event
I think it lends itself
would be the only way to, I think you bring that back as an endurance event. Like, if we're looking at, because our championship is unusual to like a Formula One where we do have endurance events, to see like an actual endurance series of like 3 or 4 again, like when we used to have the Pertec Cup.
Yeah, needs to come back, mate.
Like, if you're doing 16 events a year, to have 3 or 4 co-driver events, I think would be quite cool. I think you do Phillip Island, Gold Coast, Bathurst and Sandown as co-driver events.
Yeah, I think
4 might be too much, but to be honest,
is there too much though?
I don't know. I'm a co-driver.
When you're a co-y, mate, is there too much?
Yeah. I'll take the extra two rounds event pay.
I couldn't agree more, mate. I thought when they did the 3, it was awesome.
Yep.
I think Goldie was an amazing place for to have a co-driver, because it really put an emphasis on the co-drivers, because that's such a hardcore, gnarly little place.
Yeah, yep.
Like, they earn their keep there. Like, they cannot stuff up.
Too. Like, it actually is physical, that track.
I think, I would love to see. I've always, as a fan, just enjoyed watching the endurance races and seeing someone else jump in the car and how they go. I really find that interesting.
Yeah.
So I think, if they could bring 3 to 4 in, I think it would only be a benefit to the championship.
Thank you, Michael, and everyone from Everyone's Motorsport Army. That was good. I mean, I appreciate the questions, and don't be afraid to throw more in the comment section. As we've always said, we're steering this ship from you guys, and if it's not what you want it to be today, then hopefully tomorrow we can make something that you're looking forward to watching.
If you do have any predictions on who you think is going to go well this weekend.
Yeah, who you've forgotten, who you remember.
Yeah.
I want to actually get people to pop in their comment who forgot.
Yeah.
I reckon that's the best one.
Who do you think's going to forget?
Yes.
And who do you think's going to remember? And then we can all potentially eat a bit of humble pie on Monday, Tuesday next week.
So I like that. Yeah, who forgot? My pick for who forgot, I'm going bold. I reckon Chaz is going to forget again.
Do you?
Yeah, but forget for them is going to be back into the 10, isn't it, really? But that's my pick. So
who am I going to think is going to forget?
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, isn't it? Because you don't know.
Exactly.
We're pissing in the wind here. We're guessing, but I'm going to say potentially Randall. He's been strong lately. Maybe not going to go as well.
No offence, Randall, but yeah, good shout.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a tough weekend for the Fords, but yeah, don't be afraid. Pop your guess on who forgot in the comments section. Also, if you want to check a couple of questions in as well, we will get to those.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, like we said, I am not live streaming this weekend.
No.
So unfortunately, yeah, we're not.
Had a couple of people ask today too, are we doing? And I said, no, Scotty's at the event. He's actually going to do some work for once.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Actually, I'm not doing any work across the weekend. So
yeah.
it's only Monday that I'm pulling the race helmet back on, but I'm very much looking forward to that. Thank you to my mate Barbara for joining me on the couch tonight. It's a bit different. It's a freezing cold night here in Melbourne. We've got 3 heaters cranked while we're still freezing our asses off here in Melbourne, but I'm, looking forward to getting up there on the weekend.
Thanks for having me.
It's been good. All right, guys. Peace and enjoy the weekend race coming up.
And we'll see you for the debrief next week.
Done.
Lovely.